The Coventry music story starts really right back in the Roman occupation, and then it goes on to the Waits, but really the thing that sort of kicked it all off as far as Coventry is concerned is the Coventry Carol, which of course is an iconic piece of music.
The Coventry Carol itself was first written down that we're aware of in the 1500s, early 1500s. I think we've got a date around about the 1530s. Coventry Carol itself is rare. It's a very rare survivor. Reason why we've got very little written down about it, because it's been lost or burnt in fires. Probably the oldest copy that existed we lost in the fire in Birmingham, in the Free Library in Birmingham. We had a big fire, a lot of Coventry records was lost in there. And so we're reliant on our people's versions of this famous story.
Right, well, people like Annie Lennox has covered the Coventry Carol. Even people like Chas and Dave have covered the Coventry Carol. So many different people. Obviously the Coventry Cathedral Choir have done it, quite rightly of course. It just seems to be a song that so many people want to do.
So the Coventry Carol itself is not a very uplifting story. It's about Harold going out killing all the youngsters that are under 2 years of age because he thinks Jesus has been born. He's a threat to him. He's a future king. He's been described as a future king. So this is like a lullaby of the mothers who are losing their children. But I think in many ways we've got to be grateful that we have a version of the Coventry Carol in existence, because really it shouldn't exist. It should have disappeared at the back of the Reformation.
T. Dunville was so important because he was a major musical star right back in the Victorian days. He was on something like £100 a week, and if you look at the bill posters, he was right up there with all the top stars. And he always talked about Coventry. He used to come back to the city, so it was kind of like the Specials did much later on, and King and The Enemy always mentioned we're from Coventry. And he was another guy that always did that, and he was so well respected in the musical society.
Oh, hello, a doodle-doo. I didn't see you there. Ah, yes. Coventry's where I was born, by the name of Thomas Edward Wallen, on 29th of July, 1867, at 32 New Street, right by the cathedral. I can hardly say for certain what led me to a hankering for the stage, but I believe it was a visit I paid during my school days to Coventry Fair. Here I saw various shows, including the performance of Pepper's Ghost, that had the effect upon me to faint when I arrived home. Anyhow, I began practising high kicking and various other leg mania tricks to the amusement of the other boys. I luckily secured a place in a show in Barnsley. This was to be my first professional booking. We had an acrobat act using barrels, but on coming on stage, I simply could not lift my leg as high as I required and began kicking my partner in his ear. The audience began to laugh, and we finally jumped into our barrels. We discovered that we were stuck fast. The theatre manager shouted for us to come off, but we could not. We were stuck in our barrels for several minutes on stage as the audience laughter turned to howls and shrieks of delight. When we finally rid ourselves of the barrel, I hastened to the manager, whose anger had vanished, and, to my surprise, asked us to perform for the rest of the week. I had become an eccentric comedian. In 1889, my life as a top entertainer began. I worked and worked all over the country with my peculiar and eccentric talents. It was the autumn of 1889. I was finally playing big London shows. I was billed as the funniest man in the world. My great song of the time was Lively On and Lively Off, which tickled the public fancy to such an extent that it was the rage for nearly 2 years. Offers poured in from London and the provinces, even America. Such was my success that I was earning an amazing £100 per week. The reviews were very good as I sang my silly songs, and it was packed every night.
Mr. T.E. Dunville's drollery is as effective as ever, and he has added a ditty of the most absurd sort to his list. It seems not a whit too eccentric for the patrons of the Alhambra, who rewarded Mr. Dunville with a very hearty round of applause at the conclusion of his popular turn. He is certainly both original and innately comical.
Hello, doodle-doo! Mary Ann McGee, girl next door to me, dances in the pantomime. Wears a pair of wings, fal-de-la and things, does a giddy serpentine. A week or two ago, went to do a show, fell and burst at what she wore. Now upon the stage, Mary's all the rage, everywhere she goes, good lord. It's packed, every night, jam-packed, every night. What there is to see, well, I don't know, but from what I've heard, I fancy I shall go. Life is quieter now since the cinema came. Oh, I get by, but I do worry. Yes, I do worry.
Well, Reg Dixon was such a huge name in the day, of course, in the 30s, 40s and 50s, a major star, not just musically, of course. He was well known as being a pantomime dame, and even sort of subbed for the great George Formby. So he was a huge star in the day, and another guy that would sing songs about his native Coventry. He was very proud to come from this city. The 60s in Coventry really were quite an exciting time. There was bands like the Orchids, who were named after the Orchid Ballroom, which was of course a major constant, still is, you know, it's still the Casbah nowadays. So that was a major building and a major venue in the city. Then you've got people like Bev Jones, who was the first lady to release a single from Coventry. There was also Woody Allen and the Challengers from Leamington. So Bobby Clark and Brian Lockey, two guys from the area. Bobby was from Coventry, Brian was from Bedworth, or Bedith as we say around here. And they both backed Marty Wilde, although not at the same time. Bobby was a great drummer. He was part of the Two Eyes setup down in London, and he drummed for so many people, including Billy Fury, and of course he knew Cliff Richard and all those guys down there. And of course then you've got Brian Lockett, who was well known really for being the bass player in the Shadows. He replaced Jet Harris, and he came along, and he was only there for like a sort of year or so, but he was there at a very important time of the Shadows when they were doing Summer Holiday and all the big iconic films.
The other bands that are around around about that time, I can remember the Avengers. I can remember a band called Tony Martin and the Echo Four, and of course there was John Goodison, who was used to record under the name Johnny B. Great.
Oh, Johnny B. Great is fantastic. Big gentle giant. I used to see him at the Wolf every week, I know, for a couple of years. Gang of us used to go, even took me uncle. We did have a good time.
I used to go to General Wolf in the early 50s. There's the Free and Easy there, and the most popular man there was Billy Stevens. He played the piano, it was drums, bass, and some of the singers that used to get up were very, very good.
And there was that little chap, what was his name, from Camden, Frank Ifield. No, he was massive in 1962, just before we even got started.
Basically, I got into the business so young, I didn't even know I was in the business. Yeah, it happened here in England, actually. Do you know the first time, can I tell you, the first time I ever yodeled? I'm going to tell you this. I heard it on, do you remember a program, not old enough, but there was a program called Big Bill Campbell and his Rocky Mountaineers on BBC Radio. Nobody around, remembers that? No. Anyway, he was a Canadian singer, and I heard this yodel, and I thought, hey, I can do that, and I tried it out, and I could. I was very surprised. I tried it out when I was helping on the milk run in the early hours of Sunday morning. They were not pleased. I can tell you, my job didn't last very long. When I decided that I wanted to go overseas and spread my wings, it was natural that I picked to come here, because I felt that I was familiar with here, and then because my dad had relations here as well, and so I thought if ever I came unstuck, I could turn around and say, gotta quit. Yeah. But it was very important that I came here, and it also was important because I'd made in my mind what I wanted to do was to play the London Palladium. That's all I had in my mind. I wanted to come, and you can't play the London Palladium unless you live here, can you? No. So I had to do that. I had to come over here to live. And as luck would have it, because what a better time, and it's more by luck than judgment. What a better time I came here, because it was just at the time when, just before the British invasion all happened. Yeah. You know, those pesky deals. I'm very thankful to be there in the spearhead of all that. It's, you know, if I wasn't, I'd be in Australia still singing in all the clubs and pubs around there. But fame is a very peculiar thing. I remember when I finally did get to play the Palladium, it was really because of I Remember You. And the wonderful feeling of just walking out there, my dream was coming true, and there I was in front of an audience. And it struck me that a couple of weeks ago, nobody knew who I was. Yeah. Now here, all of a sudden, it was a Royal Command performance on television, and a live audience in front going mad. And I thought, well, this is weird. It is very strange.
After a lot of deliberation, I actually joined a band called the Solitaires, and once we'd consolidated the new lineup with me as a member, we decided to ditch that name, and we actually briefly had 2 or 3 different names before we settled on the Liberators. It was always a thing to aim for, was to be good enough to play on Reg Calvert's circuit. In about April-May of '65, I accidentally got the Liberators a recording contract with Shelt Army, and we did these couple of numbers on Stateside record. And Reg was, oh, you can record. Ah, well, when this is all over, knowing that it would blow over and come to nothing, when this is all over, come and see me. So a few months later, it didn't all blow over, and we went and saw him. Right, lads, you know. And I think it was in the dressing room at Nuneaton Co-op, he sort of sprung it on us, right, you've got to have a new name. And he started sort of throwing ideas all over the place, and he decided on Pinkerton's colours, but it had to be assorted, although we really didn't like the assorted bit. But the reason for that was the fact that there was no colour TV. And it was a fashion that started actually in rugby with in the early 64, late 63, early 64, where guys would go and get a cheap waiter's jacket and trousers and dye them their own colour, and people would be known by their colours. Reg told us from the word go, if you just have the one hit, you'll gradually spiral down into obscurity. To be properly established, you need 3 in a row. And he said each one gets easier to promote. The problem was, though, that our second release under Reg
was Don't Stop Loving Me Baby, which really wasn't up to it. It was a good B-side, it wasn't really A-side material. And it was no surprise when it didn't go very far. It got into about 26 or something like that. Okay, but the point is, the next one we did was Rocking Horse. Now, if Reg had been around, I think Rocking Horse could have been a hit. The tape was actually recorded by Marcel Bavier, who was staying with relations in Nuneaton at the time, but she was from Calais and still lives in France. It was at Nuneaton Co-op Hall on Boxing Day 1965. And although it was recorded on a very, very cheap and nasty battery-powered reel-to-reel portable, and the levels are obviously stupidly wrong, but a lot of it isn't half bad. And what amazed me most of it all was our actual repertoire. God, were we still playing that then, you know? I don't think we've got any other live recordings of any of our shows, to be honest, that I know of. I'd actually been there as audience. Because Reg ran coaches from rugby, and I saw Johnny Kidd and the Pirates and Billy J. Kramer and one or two others at the Nuneaton Co. before we actually played there, and crikey, it was something great to actually get and play there, you know. Reg had a good set of bouncers of his own, but in those days, if kids became unruly, the bouncers would smack them. And of course you've got kids going home from the Nuneaton Co. Oh, the bouncer hit me. So the parents moaned at the co-op. So the co-op said to Reg, you can't use your team of bouncers anymore. We'll supply them. We'll charge you a bit more and we'll supply stewards. The street doors were open. The lobby was full. The staircase was full. And on the crossing of the stairs, one 74-year-old guy with a little table. And when things got a bit out of hand, he legged it. There's controversy about the actual time, but as I remember it, they announced last drinks. We'd come off stage and Sam Spade and the Gravediggers were on, actually. And I did go up the corridor and I got within about 10 yards of the incident, and I found I couldn't keep my feet on the floor. This is useless, I'm out of here. And I went. But as I went, there were probably people dying at the front because you couldn't see. All you could see is a load of heads. Few people at the very front stumbled on the stairs, and that weight behind them, they would just got crushed to death. Somebody did something a bit silly on the stairs, caused somebody to stumble, and that was it. The domino effect. 4 dead and 16 injured. God, unbelievable.
Tragic.
It finished the Co. It was never the same after.
Because in those days, it was all the era of mods and rockers and all that. And nearly everybody I knew either messed about with a scooter or a motorbike. I wasn't interested in any of that. Didn't drink, didn't smoke, you know, nothing like that. All I was interested in was every penny I earned went on equipment, you know. And I think that, in turn, then landed me a job with, well, I think they were, you probably know this better than me, I think they were the first band in Coventry to have a hit record and go on top of the pops and stuff like that. It was the Sorrows.
There was a cafe across the road called St Margaret's Cafe.
Yes, I remember that.
Run by the Rogans.
Yeah.
And we all the bands, Coventry bands, used to meet in there at anything up till 5 in the morning for supper or what it was after you'd played, wherever you'd played. And I met Pip in there. I was working with a band called Johnny and the Rebels then. And I said to him, what's the matter? He said, oh, I'm fed up with it. He said, playing all this cover stuff. And I said, I'm fed up with it as well. And he said, well, why don't we get our heads together and put a band together our own? He said, I know a bass player. So he fetched Phil Packham in, And then
vampires, of course.
exactly, and somebody else knew a drummer, which was Bruce Finley.
Where did he come from?
Scotland.
He got on the wrong bus, I think. And that's how the Sorrows came about.
So there were only 3 members of the Sorrows left when they asked me to join them. The band were on the verge of splitting up because Don Farden had left, Phil Packham had left. Pip used to do most of the lead vocals anyway and was the main writer in the band. So it just meant there was one vocal less. RCA Records in Italy, who put the Sorrows' Take a Heart, the hit they had in England,